Well, this is certainly interesting. Japan has made their own third-person shooter. And it's not surprising for the fact that there are shooters in Japan, because they still get games like Call of Duty and Battlefield over there. But we don't see many shooters come from Japan themselves, and that's mainly because it's not really their thing. You know how there's a huge surplus of first-person shooters all across the US and Europe? Well, Japan instead have a large collection of RPGs with very few shooters that they actually play. Splatoon is what immediately comes to mind nowadays in terms of popular Japanese shooters. And from what I can tell, Vanquish didn't sell too badly when it came out in late 2010, around 830,000 copies worldwide, so that's gotta mean something. Usually this is where I would explain the plot, but like most shooters, it really doesn't matter, and nobody could give a shit about this story. But the basic premise is that in the near future, energy has become scarce, but this scientist has created this solar-powered generator to provide more energy, but this Russian military group called the Order of the Russian Star steal it and its creator, and it's up to the American Marines to save the day. And the gameplay is about as basic as the story as well, where you take control of Sam Gideon. It's your typical third-person shooter with albeit a couple of interesting things to stand out from the crowd. I'll explain as if you're playing the Xbox 360 version, which is what I've used for this review because I'm not too fond of playing shooters with the PS3 controller. The Xbox's controller just feels more natural to me, especially since most of its library are shooters. Anyway, pressing the left bumper will activate Sam's boost function on his suit, which lets you slide anywhere you want to go at a relatively fast speed. And shooting at any point while doing this will slow down time and allow you to be more accurate with your shots. You can also slow down time by evading and holding the left trigger. However, slowing down time at all will cause your suit to overheat and you can't use it again until the cooldown time's finished. But it barely takes long to fully cool, so you won't be restricted for a while. Melee attacks are something else you can do as well, but even punching once overheats your suit, though it does kill the grunts in a single hit, so it balances out. And finally, if you're critically low on health, then time will slow down as well, but it won't work if it's overheated, so you can't be too reckless. Other than that, you can take cover against most terrains, run and gun without aiming, and zoom the camera over your shoulder to be a little more precise when shooting. Although for some reason you can't switch shoulder views unless you're in cover, which meant I've had to put myself out in the open for enemies I couldn't see, so that was a minor issue I had with the controls. The guns are your standard assault rifles, shotguns, heavy machine guns, sniper rifles, rocket launchers, as well as a gun with homing lasers, a disc gun that cuts and ricochets off of enemies and is all around pretty useless, and the LFE, which fires this slow, giant energy ball that does pitifully small damage. Each of the weapons could also be upgraded up to 10 levels by selecting your weapon of choice and collecting the upgrade pickup that occasionally drops from enemies, usually improving stuff like ammo capacity, attack power, accuracy, and lock-on speed. There are several missions between 5 acts in the campaign, and most of them are just shooting conveniently distinguishable enemies, while sometimes taking control of stationary turrets or movable mechs, and on the rare occasion having to protect something while also fighting a boss here and there. With all this chaos going on, Vanquish is a rather loud game. The volume of the music could even drown out the character's dialogue. You can adjust the volumes if you wish, but I didn't really bother because the dialogue is the same corny, cliched dialogue we've seen in other military shooters, not to mention the tons of army films lying around. It's about on par with Bayonetta's lame-ass writing. But that's pretty much all there is to say about Vanquish. It's an entertaining third-person shooter that, just like Mad World, is a quick time sinker if you don't feel like playing long RPGs or adventure games. Vanquish's length is only around 6 hours, and honestly I think that's fine, because this game doesn't ask you to do much other than kill the same bad guys over and over again for that long. Boosting around and taking down enemies in slow-mo is quite exhilarating and is surprisingly the only thing that kept me interested in playing more. I felt like a freaking action hero doing this. But at the end of the day, this is one of those games you play once and just leave on the shelf until several years later. It's nothing too deep, but you'll likely find something about it that you enjoy. But speaking of Mad World earlier, that brings us to our next game in the Platinum Games Marathon, Anarchy Reigns, which explains what happened after the events of Mad World, so I shall see you then.